I felt like Adam Silver just chalking it up to growing pains diluted what is actually fundamentally wrong in this league. But Cass, I want to know your thoughts on it, because I know, there's a lot of he said, she said that's happening in some of these statements. There is only so much actual legitimate fact that we do know about the conversations that happen behind closed doors. So from your perspective, what are some of your kind of biggest takeaways here?
Well, going into that press conference was easily the most stressful room that I think any of us have ever been in the WNBA. Like, you could feel the anxiety. It's a small room in the Aces arena, full. You had ESPN commentators in there, which just does not happen. I mean, you just felt it the 10 minutes before Cathy came out. And I think it's interesting, the feelings inside the room versus outside the room. Cathy was not perfect by any means, and certainly she's never been great at these. But I will say her opening statement was very, very short. Usually she loves to recap press releases. She did not do that. I think she was more direct than she has been in the past. That's not saying maybe it's at the level where everyone wants her to be, but certainly compared to in the past, she gave more direct answers. She did take accountability, saying that she needs to repair the relationships. Internally, a lot of us were like, that went okay. Like that went okay. I think in terms of the he said, she said, and this tension, it is taking over all of the conversation about CBA, which I think is really interesting. I don't know that this really answers your question, but one thing that Satu said this week was that the league, I was talking with her about just coming from maybe not a lot of money and now having athlete privilege, and having money for the first time. That's not to say she's a multimillionaire like an NBA player, but she has money. And we were talking about rookies who make, about $68,000 a year. She said that the league, in their proposal, offered a minimum of $300,000, which is a pretty large jump. And there's also previous reporting by ESPN that a max salary would be around $1 million. This is the first time we've heard numbers, which I think is interesting. And I also just want to say, in talking to other players about CBA negotiations, for one, people who are in the finals are maybe not as tuned in, understandably. They're kind of waiting for their season to be over, which complicates all of this all of the time, because this is an annual thing with the CBA. But then also there are tweener players like Dana Evans, like Kalani Brown, who I spoke with, who in the past have been squeezed out of the CBA. So I think I say all of this to say that Fee speaking and what she said is definitely important and probably speaks to what a lot of people are feeling in the W. But there's also players underneath them and between a player like Fee and a player like Caitlin Clark who maybe have other priorities that I think are getting lost in this kind of battle between the sides. And I find that really interesting from just kind of a journalistic perspective.
That's fascinating.
It is.
I think from the outside, we've looked at it like we've never seen a league more united maybe than we saw in response to Napheesa Collier's statements.
But players united. Players united.
Players.
Not the league that's united,
Not
right?
The league.
But yeah, players that united. Yeah.
Right. Like players, former players, current players, players on different teams. There are so many of them have spoken out and said, yep, thank you, Fee. Like, we support Fee. But I think it is important to point out that maybe there is at least a silent minority, silent majority, whatever you want to call it. And those voices are important as well.
And I think both can be true, right? We've heard a lot of players say, I spot no lies, or yes, Fee, but that doesn't mean that they stand by every single thing that she said. And on top of that, you can stand by Fee while also maybe having different views on how you should go about a CBA negotiation. Like that's really the thing I keep thinking about is Fee lying? Is Cathy lying? What's going on here? It's what is this clouding over as we talk about what's going to happen next and what really needs to happen in terms of coming to an agreement on a CBA. Like, the relationships are important. I'm not denying that. But I think it's interesting how it has taken over the rest of this conversation.
Yeah. And think about the other side, right? Of being an owner, right? The owners are sitting down with Cathy. You're talking about the CBA and what needs to happen. The players come to the table and say what they want. It is a much harder conversation right now if players feel like a commissioner is not valid in what they're saying, is not supporting conversations that happen. Maybe flat out said that a player lied and they did not say these things. It is a much harder conversation that is now happening than it was 2 weeks ago, right? That we didn't know about. I would argue that even between Fee's statement and then today, that conversation was harder after Cathy decided to have her press conference and the results that came from that. Like, to me, I thought she would have gone into that more solution based in terms of, hey, this is what we're working on. This is what we're putting forward. And I think you're right, Cass. Like, even if she did, what came out of that was the cloud of discourse and that we can't necessarily find a way forward. And we want the league to find a way forward. You know, you're experiencing all this growth. I mean, we talked about the Caitlin Clark effect on this pod. It's now been 2 years post the Caitlin Clark effect, right? The game 1 of the WNBA finals was the most watched, right? Had the most viewers without that signature name. So we know that the growth, to me, is sustainable. We know that it's happening. But for the owners, my question is almost, what needs to happen in terms of leadership to bridge the gap with players? We know that this person in this situation right now does not have a great relationship with players, but what can you do to make sure that that exists? That is the next question that lands, because I do not believe that the W players are going into these negotiations smiling and saying good morning and talking to Cathy. I believe that there is attitude and anger and a pissed offedness about them that is making these negotiations way harder. And again, we've only got till October 31st to hopefully figure it out. I'll lastly say, I love the numbers that you gave, Cass, but it's so interesting because we don't quite know how much the league is making. We don't quite know the difference, right? 1 million could be short. I read an article the other day from the New York Times that had estimated that players like Alyssa Thomas and Asia Wilson should be making 4 million by their calculations of the basketball income that is being brought into this league. So those numbers sound great because honestly, the bar right now is set low. You know, it's like an ex-boyfriend that didn't care to call you every day. And now you date somebody and they just text you every day. Like, hey, I'm happy I'm getting a text because I was never getting called before. Like, no, the bar is low, dude. We need to raise the bar altogether. So those numbers sound good to me right now. It sounds like a salary in which someone can play for 4 to 5 months and live the rest of the year off of. It eliminates the fact that some of these players will have to go overseas and play. That is still a major concern right now in the W, is how many players go overseas and are making the majority of their money and then coming back. Players that experience injury overseas and then can't play in this league that we care about. And then we obviously have Unrivaled. That is presenting a new and different opportunity for players to have something to do in the offseason and bring in money and build their sponsorships and build their brand. There's too much going in it right now. I feel like the conversation is tough because of the press conference that Cathy had. And I'm just wondering what the owners are trying to do to bridge that gap between the players. To me, that's the question that needs to be answered right now.
One thing I will also throw out into this conversation, Cathy's comment about Fee aside in that press conference, the W has a history and seem to be right now not wanting to be negative towards their players, right? Or call out their players. And it seems to be why there aren't a lot of numbers coming out or, you know, negativity towards the players. They have never wanted to do that. They have never bought into that. And to your point about like, you know, Cathy coming to the presser with like some solutions or talking about the CBA, it seems like her and the WNBA and NBA and owners do not want to speak about what they're looking for at the negotiating table.
And I do, to a certain extent, appreciate protecting your players and not putting a dollar amount or a value out into the world. And then now players are forced to answer to that, or the court of public opinion starts to nitpick exactly what those numbers are. I do understand that and appreciate that to a certain extent. My thing, what bothered me about Cathy Engelbert's press conference, and it is interesting, Cass, your perspective actually being there. One thing that bothered me, rubbed me the wrong way, is Cathy Engelbert talked about like the backlash that she's been receiving and about how she has kids and they are hearing these things or hearing negative talk and it's hurting them. That doesn't like surprise me. And I understand that. That's really hard being in positions like we're in. And when you have a public facing job, the court of public opinion has every right to say whatever they want to about you. And we forget often that we have families and they see that, they read that. My mom sees things about social media and it makes her so sad. And that's a sliver of the amount of exposure that I have versus what Cathy Engelbert has. I get it. I understand it. We are people. We have families too. The onus is not on the court of public opinion to be nice to you. It's your responsibility to do your job. It is your responsibility to respond to that in a positive way, to repair those relationships, to be better moving forward. It felt to me in Cathy Engelbert saying that, yes, it's a reminder that we are humans as well, but also that's not our job. It is your job to make those relationships with the players. Don't tell people, hey, stop being mean to me, guys. No. Do your job correctly, and then the court of public opinion won't be forced to have those kind of negative comments about you. So I wanted to see a little bit more responsibility in what Cathy Engelbert was saying.
I have another way of looking at this. Ice, you can go first.
Yeah. My quick comment, like Cathy has also been leadership at Deloitte. You know what it's like to have a public facing job. This is just the first time in which you work closely with your employees. See, that's the difference, right? Is Deloitte, you're not necessarily touching those that are on the ground, boots working, getting things actually done. You're having conversations with leadership and we sending out memos. Now you are dealing with players and having to have conversations because that is the job that you have. You've been doing it for 6 years. I just think time is up. I think the personal relationship has been damaged and it's been 6 years. The league has experienced astronomical growth. Somebody else is probably more equipped to handle where the league is going next.
Just more context for Cathy, something I've been thinking about. And I'm glad you brought up Deloitte because that's exactly where I'm going.
Great
Cathy
line.
is, we always got each other. Cathy is 60 years old. She was the first female CEO of Deloitte. And at the time, especially knowing older women in my life, my aunt-in-law was a CEO of a big company. They came up at a time when it was very much male run. And so to survive and work in that business, you almost have to kind of hide who you are sometimes as a woman and take on male qualities at the time. 2025, obviously very different than 2005. And I'm not saying this as an excuse or, as an excuse for the situation she's in now. But when I heard the stuff about her family and just kind of like that reminder and hearing that internally from some people this week of like, hey, like she's a person too, I took it as like, okay, she's finally kind of tapping into that I'm a human too situation that maybe she had always been used to ignoring because she came up in business at a time when it was all men. And if you did that as a woman, for lack of a better term here, you're just kind of screwed. Like you were treated differently. You were treated less than for that. And again, not as an excuse, not saying that she shouldn't be better in this moment, but certainly it's a part of her past that you can't just run away from.
Yeah. And no one deserves to be threatened. No one deserves those type of comments. No one deserves that. You end of the day, you are doing a job. But when you have a public facing job, that is what comes with it. The three of us have experienced that, had conversations about that. The same holds true for Cathy. So we want her to be safe. We want her to be okay. But at the same time, we also just want better. We want better for the league. And honestly, guys, knowing Cathy's work over the last 6 years, you want better for Cathy. Like, I think Cathy could have been better in these moments in terms of what we've seen. But again, the dynamic and relationships have been tarnished. So I think she's trying to put her best foot forward. I just honestly think time has run its course.
In terms of public facing or in terms of like what she's done for the league?
Well, I know that.
That's two very important conversations.
100%. In terms of what she's done for the league, she has done a good job. I remember years ago talking about flights and players still find commercial flights. I could bump into Copper on the way to, finals in Chicago because they were taking regular flights. Like, this was a big deal. It's so funny now how we talk about this league because just 2-3 years ago, it looked drastically different. Like, you would have thought we went from the 1970s to 2025 in 2 years. And so happy for that growth. So I think what she did in those moments was good. I think that the league couldn't have been prepared for the growth that was coming. And so that is how I defend her. If I'm defending Cathy, that's all I could say is I don't think anyone could have been prepared to handle the amount of growth that came with the league. But on the other side of it, you've now had 2 years to settle in, to sit down, to build moving forward. And if these relationships are tarnished at this point, what can you do?
I kind of view it as an impasse, kind of like in a dating history. Sometimes you have to date that guy. A lot of dating. My feels. Sometimes you have to date someone to remind you who you are.
Have you guys been listening to Taylor Swift this week? Like, what is happening?
People. I'm crying.
I'm in a very happy and healthy relationship.
Dating reference.
Okay. Just watching a lot of reality TV. But like sometimes you need to date someone to remind you that you're that girl. Like sometimes you have to date somebody to get your, you have to renew your trust in people. But then that person's not your person. Like you grow with them as a person to a certain extent, and then that gets you to your ultimate person, reminds you who you are. Maybe that's what Cathy Engelbert is for the league. Like maybe the league needed Cathy to get to this point, but now we need to go our separate ways because we've grown and we can't grow together anymore. And I need to break up with you to ultimately find my happily ever after. Like, we're at an impasse with Cathy Engelbert. Like, I think it's fair enough to say the league couldn't have experienced growth at this point without her, but can't experience any more with her.
Wise words from a woman with the ring.
Thank you. Get my point, though,